Welcome to the Powerhouse Project, a podcast highlighting some pretty incredible women. I'm your host, Lisa Laronde. This is our first show back after a brief summer break, or as I like to refer to it, the beginning of construction season. I'm not only excited to be back, but I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest, Minister Filomena Tassi. She's the minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario. Hello and welcome, Minister Tassi. Or can I call you Filomena?
You can absolutely call me Filomena.
I actually like the fact that minister is such an inclusive term. So it doesn't matter your race or your gender. I guess everybody, if you get to that level, becomes a minister. Do you know, is there history behind the title minister?
I'm not certain about that, but you're right on that. The comment, it's male or female, it's referred to as minister. But I actually like being called Filomena.
That's awesome. I would prefer that if that's okay with you.
It's fantastic.
So tell me a little bit about your life actually before entering politics, so we can just learn a little bit about you.
Yeah. So look, I'm really happy to be on this podcast with you, Lisa, and I do want to congratulate you being named the top 100 by the Women's Network for your leadership and empowerment. And so congratulations to you, and thanks for the great work that you're doing. Look, a bit of my background. So I've had a few careers. I started as a lawyer and I practiced law for about 6 years. And then my husband and I started our family, which was a surprise. We weren't anticipating that, but it was a fantastic surprise. So when that happened, I transitioned out of law and went into high school chaplaincy because I wanted to be, with my kids a little more. And the high school chaplain was perfect. I'm a woman of faith, so able to practice my faith and be with young people, which I love, and at the same time spend a lot of time with my kids. And then after almost 20 years of that, then I went into politics. And so for the past 9 years, I've served as a member of parliament for Hamilton, West Ancaster, Dundas. And the past 6 years as a minister in different portfolios.
So I have to ask how you go from lawyer to school chaplain to politics out of all of the career paths. How did you, or what prompted you to get into politics?
Yeah, I think that I often get this question.
I can imagine.
And I have to say that when I was first asked to run federally, my first response was absolutely not. I am not doing that. And then what happened is, I guess most people would say the stars aligned, right? Like it was one thing after another. So my first response was no. So when I was asked, it was no, I'm not doing that. But then things started to line up. And, for me, I prayed a lot about it. I had conversations with my family, and ultimately I decided that I would step forward and put my name forward. I knew what was involved to some extent because I worked in a family where we volunteered in politics for years. My parents, particularly my mother, was the one that introduced me into politics, and she introduced me and my 3 siblings, but I was the only one that bit. But I always saw myself in the background. I never saw myself as occupying the position as the politician. But then, here I am. So, and it's interesting because they say that when women are asked, they have to be asked repeatedly before they actually say yes and commit. So it's interesting, but here I am.
So I know I actually was recently at the AMO conference, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and I was actually lucky enough to speak actually on 2 panels, one about women in leadership and the other one was on infrastructure. But it was interesting, and I didn't realize this, just the amount of online harassment that women are getting that are in politics and globally, that's causing women now to either leave or to not participate. So do you have any comments, or have you experienced anything like that?
Well, look, I always try and be positive.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I got into politics, the main reason is to serve. That's what motivated me. So if you were to say to me, what sort of at the end of the day was the deciding factor? And I thought the opportunity to be able to serve people in this capacity. I mean, I was serving in chaplaincy, journeying with people on some difficult challenges, but also some, fun and great things. Politics the same, like to think that you can actually be a part of implementing programs that are going to help people, like $10 a day childcare, like pay equity, like the Women's Entrepreneurship Program, $6 billion. So those are the things that I thought to myself, that's what was the deciding factor. In terms of the challenges, they're absolutely there. And the anger and the frustration and the vitriol, like that is a part of the day-to-day life, which is regrettable.
Yeah.
But I think that's why we need more women in politics, because I think that women will be the change in this regard. You know, one of the things I implemented when I started was a mindfulness group. So I actually had mindfulness before question period and invited people to come to take that breath, because question period is probably the most, challenging part of the day in terms of some of the things that are said and the political positioning and that. And it's a part of the life. Like I'm not saying it shouldn't be there, but I just think that there's ways to do this that are much more positive. And I think that there is a space for positive politics. And I think that women, if anyone, are going to be the leaders. So although it is challenging, and although you have to face, think I have to carry a panic button. Now my house has cameras through it. I am checking my back at times. I come to my office and it's, there's graffiti and protests but if you can, we need women to step forward and to take on these roles, to change the way we do it. We can do this and do it in a way that we accomplish so much, and it's a positive environment, a collaborative environment. I think it's what Canadians want. So we need women. So I respect the decision. If it's too much, I totally understand. People have young kids, they're getting yelled at as they're going down the street and their kids are brought into it. I get all that. I appreciate and respect where people are at. But I think that the challenge is there for us to step up and to really fight to change it. But it's hard.
And I think we really do need representation. That's the only way that we're going to make change, is to have people, honestly, like yourself, that tells a story, that actually tells a true story, that is difficult and it's not for everybody. But I think if we can actually continue to tell our stories and continue to work together, then I always say, women, we look for a community of women that we can interact with, that we can be safe with, that we can be our authentic selves with, but that you'll be honest with one another and we'll support one another. I think that that's just so important. So how do you think we can attract more women into either the political arena, or how do we elevate them up into getting them into a more of a leadership role within politics?
Well, let me say a couple things. The first is, your podcast is a perfect example. Like having these conversations where, as you say, there's an admission. Is it always easy? No, it's not always easy. There are challenges, but there is a path forward. I look at the Prime Minister appointing a gender balanced cabinet. This impacts the priorities that we have set. When you look at things like increasing the Canada Child Benefit, like pay equity, can you believe that we don't pay women equally for work of equal value?
Can you believe that people actually think that's okay not to pay women the same wage? That surprises me.
So these are initiatives that the federal government has implemented and put forward. And part of that, I think, is because there's tons of priorities. Having a gender balanced cabinet and having equal representation of women at that cabinet table, and a prime minister that listens equally to the women as he does to the men, is important. And so the only way we're going to do that is by having women step forward. Now, I say, I respect those that feel they can't. They're in a position in their lives where they can't, but it's important that we do that. Secondly, we have to have a framework that allows, and structures in place that allow women to be able to participate.
Yes.
I think of the challenges that we navigate. So at one point, when I was serving as Minister of Public Services and Procurement, which, by the way, is 24/7, like you're 24/7 on the job. It's a full portfolio that is very demanding, very challenging, fantastic portfolio. But when I was there, I was ensuring that we got the rapid tests, because it was coming. COVID was upon us, but it was the end of COVID, more the end of it, while buying fighter jets, while ensuring Canada Post was maintained. Well, like the list goes, and the the houses that we own. Like, it was just, it's a huge portfolio. So there was a lot there. So I had an issue at home, and it was relating to my husband's health. So I went to the Prime Minister, and I just told him what my reality was. I can't do this. Like, I just can't do it. I can't. I'm juggling as best I can, and we're good at juggling. But I'm going to drop a ball. My family. I have to. My family comes first, and I have to. So did he shuffle me out? No. You know what he did? He found me a portfolio that kept me closer to home. If the federal government can do this, then we can do this. We can find pathways. And why do we find those pathways? Not just because it's the morally right thing to do, because we as a country are way better off with the full participation of women in the workforce. And our record is good. So now women aged 25 to 54, I'm going to refer to a stat I have here, reached a record of 85.7% participation in the workforce in February. The US was only 76%. And guess what? We're benefiting because women are participating in the workforce. The final thing I'll say outside of politics, although it's my political portfolio that enables me to do it, I'm at roundtables with women entrepreneurs. And you know what? This is why I commend you on this podcast. We're sitting around those roundtables and we're having discussions. And I'm with women that are amazing. They have fantastic ideas. They have ideas that they are passionate about. They have the energy. They have a motivation. And then we say, okay, you need a business plan. And some women have never put together a business plan. It's like, I can't do that. How am I going to put together a business plan? So the federal government implemented a $6 billion women entrepreneurship strategy to help them with things like, putting together business plans. But it's the work in that, it's the voices in that room when we're around that table, Lisa, where a woman will say something like, I was challenged with a business plan. I didn't even know what that was. Or, I went to a lending institution and I had to go to 15 of them. None of them were, or I was, I had to talk about how I was going to do these things that I didn't have any clue about. The liberation and the freedom and the relief that you hear when that woman says that, and the woman beside her said, you know what? I was just too embarrassed or felt too bad about asking that question. So let's have these forums and let's have this dialogue so that obstacle isn't as big as what it seems. And I'll tell you, we as women take those obstacles very seriously because we're so conscientious. But that's what makes women so great as entrepreneurs, because they think of absolutely everything and they want to do it well and they want to knock it out of the park. And I can tell you, we as a government know they can knock it out of the park, which is why we make investments like that.
And I think that that's really important. And we can, I love the fact that the federal government has, gender equity and that it's intentional. And we talk a lot about DEI, particularly in my industry in construction, in that everyone goes, I hire the best person for the job. And I go, but if you look at statistically, what happens is women will only apply for jobs if they possess, and I think I might have the incorrect stat, but 80% of the skill set that's actually on the job application. So similar to what you're saying is if you approach a woman to say, here, take this position, you have to ask repeatedly. And sometimes that's taken as, you ask the first time and they go, no, I don't think I can do it, or I can't balance it. And then they move on to the next person. So I say, you don't always have the best person for the job. We really do have to look at how do we get this inclusive environment? And I like the fact that you went to the leader of our country to say, this isn't working for me. It takes so much guts to be able to do that, to go. And when I talk to him, I go, what's the worst thing that can happen is you lose your job. That's it. You're employable. Think about it. You'll go somewhere else. You're really good at what you do. But the chances are, whether you're the leader of the country or the leader of an organization, if you're adding value to that organization, they're going to find something for you. And I've talked to other women that have said they've gone in and said, you know what, I need to do a 4-day work week because I need this extra day because I have young children. So I really think that's important that we start to look at different ways that we can be inclusive. I talked just recently to one, she's on a board and we're trying to get more women involved on some of these boards. And she was saying one of the problems is in the summer, they start their board meetings at 9:00, but you got to recognize when you have young kids, they need to drop them off at a camp, and you're either somebody's responsible for doing the drop off and pick up. Can't we schedule a board meeting either at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 9 o'clock? Like, does it have to be right at 8? And I think the more we talk about just some of these little things that we can do to be a little bit more inclusive for women, I think that's how we're going to start to attract more women into all of our industries.
I couldn't agree more. And you know what? You can't feel guilty about those things.
Yeah.
We're balancing so much, like you look at women's roles. We wear so many hats, right? Raising our children, caring for our parents, taking the kids to the medical appointments, doing the grocery shop. Like, we're juggling everything and we want to do it so well. So, Lisa, you're absolutely right. Like, was that conversation an easy one? No. Did it take me a long time to figure out exactly what I was going to say and to get the courage to say it? Yeah, it took me time. But I think that what we have to realize is that we can't have guilt for that.
Yeah.
We can't feel bad for that. We can't be apologetic.
Yeah.
These are our lives. The reason I'm in there is because my family is important to me.
Yeah.
And I've had a partner who's supported me all his life and elevated me. Now it's time for me to be supportive of him. And so, those conversations result from, I think, all the hats that we wear. And I think that there has to be an understanding and a spirit that accepts that. And in the Prime Minister's case, he could have shuffled me out of cabinet. He didn't. Yeah. He found a position for me that would allow me to continue to contribute. And I think that example is an important one. And if the Prime Minister of Canada can do that, then that sets an example for all of us, doesn't it? And I don't think that women should feel guilty or they should feel bad about these things. We're not doing this. We want women to participate because they add so much, that their contributions are so very important. A gender balanced cabinet isn't about ticking a box. It's about having a discussion where the Prime Minister listens equally to women as does to men, and setting priorities, because there's huge demands on what those priorities are. And when you have an equal number of women around the table, you can get things passed like childcare at $10 a day, pay equity, paying people equally, paying women equally for work of equal value of men. Can you believe that we don't have? And we got that across the finish line. I, as Minister of Labor, it's so vitally important, So I think it's just, I don't want women to feel guilty. The message I have for women is we're way better served when you're there. And what we need to do is collectively to work on changing the structures that exist in order to enable your participation and to put us and to highlight it and to encourage it and to do what we can to foster women to be elevated and participating.
And I think you touched on something that's very important to me about, we need to be heard as women. And I think that when you have more women in a boardroom or in an advisory board or just in a setting, I think we hear each other. And I think you and I talked about this briefly about, when I'm the only woman in a boardroom and, sometimes I'll put my opinion forward, my voice is just not heard. And it's weird that it's because, of my gender. It's not because of the ideas that I'm bringing forward or how forceful I'm talking about it. And so I think that the more women we have around the table, I think that our voices are going to be amplified. Do you agree with that one? Or
I agree 100%. So I think of my own experience, right, in the practice of law. I remember being in the registrar's office, University of Western, walking down the hall, and I was looking at the graduation pictures on the wall. And the year that struck me was 1962. I remember that year because it was the year I was born. What was different about that graduating picture? There was one woman graduating from law school.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I thought, wow, what a trailblazer. Look at this. This is unbelievable. In an educational environment, all men, all profs, all men. Going into a profession, all men. And she wasn't afraid. Well, she took the step. Maybe she was. Maybe she did have trepidation. Normal, but she did it. Yeah. And now look at where we are in the practice of law. My son just graduated from law school, over 50% woman. Hooray. Yeah. But the only way we get there is by taking the steps, recognizing the barriers that are in place, and doing what we can to make the changes necessary so that the participation of women is welcomed, valued, appreciated, and encouraged.
And I think it's so important that that message is clear to people, is you saw that woman in the picture. So that's how forceful representation is, because if you'd never seen her, you probably would have said, you know what, law school's not available to me. It's only for men. So I think that that's just so important. And it's interesting. She was actually on the podcast, young lawyer, Maggie Casey. She's based out of Ottawa. And she tells a really cool story about lots of women she went to Queen's University, lots of women in her school, lots of women in her law cohort, chose a practice that had lots of women partners. So felt very, very inclusive and didn't experience any of this discrimination. And then she gets her first case and the guy says to her, "You're my lawyer?" No, I want a man. No one's going to take you seriously. So she goes, I just didn't know how to react, because I was like, what do you mean? I am a lawyer. But it was just funny. So I also said, I think we also have to give this younger generation the tools to be able to deal with it, because they do get into the workforce that's not inclusive. And I think it's important, which is part of why we tell our stories, is for them not to give up and to understand that there is a community behind them, and that we will support. We have to continue to support women.
Yeah. And listen, the story you share, that in itself shows progress. At least she
Yes.
got to the point
Yes.
with a client. I mean, when I started to practice, it would be like I'd be on the phone speaking to a client and they'd say, "Can you put the lawyer on the phone?"
Yeah.
I'd say, "I am the lawyer." So there's progress can be made, and it
Yeah.
has been made, which is fantastic. And I do think we have to take time to celebrate that
Yes.
progress. But we also have to have eyes wide open with respect to the challenges that are still there. And you're doing so much work of women in the trades. And I'll tell you one thing that I've heard with women in the trades. Yes, the federal government is putting through these programs and working with unions and others to get women participation up. They are doing amazing work. Their attention to detail, their dedication, their commitment shining through. But if they're on the shop floor and they're getting passed by their coworkers,
Yeah.
we need to address that. And so, I think that we have to understand that these challenges are there, but
Yeah.
they can't stop us, because we know that when we face those challenges head on, that we are going to make progress. And that progress isn't just good for women, it's good for everyone, because women's participation is so vitally important. Speaking about women's participation, we know that the increase in participation from 25 to 54 years old has reached 85.7%. That was a study from February. States is only 75%. But also a study from 2017 shows that in Canada, if women were to achieve equal opportunities in the workplace, it could add up to $150 billion to Canada's GDP.
Wow.
So that's not only the fiscal reality. Also think of how the products that are made, the ideas that are brought to life. There's so much potential. And we want to continue to invest in women and encourage them to step up. And we will support them every step of the way, because it's the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and they say if you have women on your executive, you're actually 20% more profitable than companies that do not have women on their executive. So even from just a profitability point, I also say to people, if you want, when we're looking now, again, I'm obviously my field is construction. So we're looking at, I think we have an 85,000 people shortage in 2030 from attrition and retirement. So at some point, this will be catastrophic if we don't attract more people into the construction industry. And women represent 50% of the population, 5% in the skilled trades. So obviously there's more that we can do. And one of the things I did look at was Alberta actually has a higher percentage. They're like at 7 or 8%. And I know BC is starting to look at that. So it would be nice if we could get Ontario, like all of our all of our levels of government, our unions together, some of our associations together, to say, okay, we understand that there's this issue or this problem that's coming up. What do we do as a cohesive group to be able to change that? And it's not always money, because sometimes, as you say, it's just opportunity, access to childcare. I know that that's a global problem, and just the hours that they operate. I don't have what all of those answers are. We were talking about, having an advisory board between some of the unions, some of our associations like KWIC, the Canadian Association of Women in Construction, as well as the government and education, to say, okay, what do we do now that we're training all these women to be in the skilled trades, but then they get into there, and in our case, we're working in live traffic, so you can't actually start late or leave early like a lot of the trades can. And I hear that a lot for women, that they either delay having children, or they pick a skilled trade that actually works to have a little bit more flexibility. But I think together we can actually figure that out of how do we solve this?
Absolutely. We have to be vocal about what the challenges are,
Yeah,
and then we can come up with solutions. And there's no question that we can come up with those solutions. In the trades, as you say, there's such a need right now.
yeah,
And I've been around, I remember an event that was hosted by Build a Dream, and I had like 12 women around the table that were in different trades, right? From framing to bricklaying to millwright to it was fantastic. But to set these women up for success, we do have to work together to make it easier.
yeah,
Childcare, I mean, it's one of the things I've mentioned a number of times on this
yeah,
podcast, but so very important. Like, let's have childcare, and let's have it so that there can be times that are staggered to accommodate
yeah,
women. That's not that hard to do.
yeah,
The Canada Child Benefit, so that it supports women and encourage people to go to work with things like pay equity, so you're getting equal
yeah,
pay for work of equal value. It makes sense for women to go to work. We have to continue to work together to bring down those barriers, and often it's just challenging those barriers. Why do they exist?
yeah,
They generally don't make sense, and sometimes it's just a tweak that everybody is open to. The final thing I'll say on this is that, we did put out a challenge. It was ISED, Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, that said, listen, we want to put out a 50-30 challenge to have 50% of boards occupied by women and 30% by underrepresented groups. And I think that's a great challenge for all of us to
yeah,
try and reach. Because you're going to then have the participation there that's going to help make the contributions that are going to create a framework that makes it easier, not harder. We
yeah,
don't want, when I'm saying for women, I want them to participate, I also want to be there with them every step of the way so that it makes it easier for them to participate. I don't want them frustrated.
yeah,
I remember at one point in my life, I was working full time, raising 2 kids, and taking a master's of religious ed at University of St. Mike's. And I'll tell you, that balance was tough. And
yeah,
it was only because of my husband, who was there every step of the way with me.
yeah.
And by the way, men can be fantastic allies and partners
Agreed.
with us in this, and we need them every step of the way. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for men like my father and my husband. And so we can get the partnerships. They want the best for us, that we are able to shine and our gifts are able to be demonstrated. And so, absolutely, we're in this together. We have to take a collaborative approach. It's a win win win. And as a federal government, I say that programs like the $6 billion in the
Yeah,
Women Entrepreneurship Strategy is one particularly that relates to my file, where I'm seeing the difference it's making, where women are getting the supports that they need, not because they need extra help, because they need a level playing field.
agreed. Now, how do we get the message out to women that these programs are actually available to them? What would be the best course to do that?
Podcasts like this do
Yeah,
it. We try on social.
yeah,
Really, it's important that women be a part of sharing the messages, because
yeah,
women will listen to other women. When I'm at those roundtables, you can't believe the connections that
yeah,
form as a result of that. My daughter has a company, High Vibe Women, and she shares with me stories about how bringing women together and having these conversations.
yeah,
So I think that word of mouth on the ground saying, listen, there are programs. In my portfolio, we have a business scale up program where we can help businesses to take their business to the next level, to scale up. And we want to offer that support. So, amplifying this, it's hard, I be honest, as a politician, because a
yeah,
lot of people think, oh, self-serving, it's just, but I want to just get the information out there so that women know of what supports are available to them, and men as well, because there's
yeah,
amazing programs that are offered by the government to elevate, to take, people to the next level. We see potential, we see possibilities. One of the greatest strengths we have in this country is our people, and
yeah,
we want to empower people to take their gifts and talents to the next level. And that's the way that we shine. And we as a country should be celebrating this and putting all of our uh, uh, money encouragement behind people.
So why do you think Canada is ahead of having the employable women in the age group that you were given, 24 to 50 something that you said? Why do you think they're ahead of the United States?
I think it is. I think it's creating those programs that the government is doing that are encouraging women to get into the workforce. Even if you look at judges now we have 54% of female judges. This just doesn't happen. You have to have the programs in place
Yep.
that are enabling women to get that start. And I don't want to make it political, but the opposition is voting against a number of these programs. So I think women have to have eyes wide open. Okay, what are we going to be supported in? What supports are going to be taken away if, in fact,
Yeah.
the government changes? But when we highlight the things like the gender balance cabinet is critical, but things like pay equity, $10 a day childcare, women entrepreneurship program, the Employment Equity Act, where we're reviewing the act to ensure that that there are there's equality with respect to promotions, with respect to women in executive leadership positions. All these initiatives that the government has undertaken that we get opposition to. It's not a slam dunk.
Yep.
Women have to be aware of these and do their homework in terms of knowing as we move forward what the future looks like. But the programs have to be in place. If you have women that it's not affordable for them to go to work because the childcare costs are so high, $10 a day childcare, this is going to save families thousands of dollars a year. The Canada Child Benefit, all these programs that help commit. So I think it's what it looks like and what programs are there to support, including things like the Women Entrepreneurship Program, to give women that fighting chance.
Now, do you think there'll ever be a chance that we would have like a 24-hour daycare so that people that are obviously in the trades or first responders that would need overnight childcare? Do you think that that's ever an option that will be available for us?
I encourage women to advocate for that.
Yeah.
Why can't there ultimately be?
Agreed.
See?
Yeah.
So, but you know what? Like it's like childcare workers, like what COVID showed us.
Yeah.
More prominently or evidently is that the professions that women occupy are often those professions that the value of work is not acknowledged.
Yeah.
So you look at things like early learning and childcare. You look at nursing. You look at those that work with elderly.
Yeah.
You look at PSWs.
Yeah.
People that are doing such important work, being with people at the end of their life by their bedside, taking care of them. But that's about it. So at the employment equity only applies, we pass legislation that works at the federal level, right? So equal pay for work of equal value.
Yeah.
So I think of my experience in the high school. You have the janitor, which is normally male dominated, and then you have the head secretary, who's normally female dominated. She's taking care of, millions of dollars in money and budget. And is she getting paid fairly for what she does? Do women get paid fairly? I say that they don't, which is why we need to shine the light on this. Look at the value, appreciate the value, and then compensate for the work that's being done.
So the $10 a day daycare, is that across Canada?
So the goal is $10 a day childcare across Canada. Right now we're at 50%. Some provinces are at the $10, but that is a commitment that we're getting to. But right now we're all at 50% cut in daycare costs with the hope that we're going to get to the $10 a day in the next couple of years. Yeah.
And does that impact, because then that, I think it causes like another issue, which is what you're saying, like equal pay for equal value work. So then does it impact the wages of childcare workers?
This is where, so it's the provinces that actually provide the service. So this is why we enter into agreements with the provinces. Part of those agreements are, listen, there has to be fair compensation for the workers.
Yeah.
And so spaces becomes an issue. Like, do we have the people power in order to occupy those spaces? How do we get that power? So we want to work collaboratively with the provinces so that we get there, because we want to ensure that as people, now there's going to be more demand. Because it's going to be affordable. It's going to bring more women to work and men. There's some men that are looking after the kids, and the women are working in the in homes. So the question is, it's the collaborative part that is so vitally important. But I think that it has been so positive. I mean, I've spoken with so many families that say to me, thanks, Phil, for getting that across. We wouldn't be able to do this. Some have even said we're going to have another child because this enables us to do that. It makes it affordable.
Yes.
That's the level that we're at.
Well, so, because I've heard for the people that are not making a lot of money, it doesn't, their net pay doesn't make any sense. They're just working to pay for childcare, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So
yeah, exactly. Yes.
I think you're doing an awesome job. So we usually end our podcasts with the same question: is what advice would you give your younger self?
Okay, I love this question because I'm 62 now and I've learned a lot over the years. So here's my response to that. And some of it has come out in this discussion we have. And I want to thank you, Lisa, for the opportunity. Really been an honor and a pleasure. First, confidence. Have confidence in yourself and aim for the stars. You serve no one by shrinking. You serve everyone by believing in yourself and stepping up. Let's have that confidence. And the government is going to be there every step of the way to give you the confidence. And if you need more confidence, reach out. And I'll give you a pep talk on the confidence piece. Secondly is surround yourself with good people. Yes. This is really important. Right. Especially I worked in high schools. I saw the pressures of, young people with respect to popularity, with respect to power, with respect to money. No, surround yourself with people that want to bring out the best in you. Yeah. That want to make you shine, especially your partner that you're going to pick. The third is don't be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are opportunities to become better and to become stronger. Yes, they hurt, they're hard, but take those mistakes and elevate yourself. Everybody makes mistakes, so don't feel bad about that. And finally, always be true to yourself. When you bring out your best self, right? That means being true to yourself. You've got it. You can do it. Go for it. We believe in you. We want you. We want to elevate you, and we want to see the amazing contributions that you make in being your best self.
I love that. Filomena, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. And I think it's so important that you continue to inspire this younger generation as well as the older generation, not only to pursue careers in politics, but to pursue leadership. I think what you said today is astounding. I'm a huge admirer of you. I'm not a big political person, but I tell you, I would vote for you any day of the week. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. We could have talked for an hour. I have a whole bunch of things I'd like to be able to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Listen, I'd vote for you too. You want to put your name on a ballot?
Absolutely not. No, I could not do what you do. 100% hands down. I could not.
Thank you and your team. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You can learn more about today's guest in the show notes and at the powerhouse-project.com. And if you know a woman in leadership or in the skilled trades that would like to be on the show, please reach out via voicemail or a message on the website. Follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for listening.